document. Let's take an example. Performance test environment should be ready before the test plan. Okay, as I have already mentioned, like the test environment should be ready before the performance test start date. So whenever we are starting any kind of performance test, before that we have to make sure the environment is ready and it is not down, or any kind of, it is not facing with any kind of issue. So it should be perfectly working fine and there is no lag in the server. So with all the dependency, if everything goes correct or right, then we can proceed with our performance test activity. So once the performance test plan is finalized, then share it with the stakeholders. So as I already mentioned, like once the performance test plan is finalized, then we have to share it this with our project team and get the stakeholders approval. Like the stakeholders will go through the particular test plan document overall, and if they find out any changes, they will ask us to update, and we have to make changes on that particular document and make a new version of that particular document. And we have also need to mention what are the changes they are asking for. And once and only we get the stakeholders approval, then only we can proceed with our next activity. So once the test plan is approved by from the stakeholders, once it is approved by the stakeholders, they have to explain and provide the test plan document to the team members to get a better understanding about the strategy, scope, and scenario. So according to the approach document, and what will be our deliverable in this particular phase? So performance test plan document is the deliverable of this phase, which consists of detail PT approach. In this particular phase, we have to deliver the particular performance test plan document. Once it is getting approved from the stakeholders, then only the scope and the scenarios will be finalized, and the number of type of test and how many type of the test execution cycle we need to perform, all that. Now let's see. Okay, let's see a performance test plan document and understand more about it. So again, so this is the way you have to mention a company logo, company name, performance test plan template. You have to mention what is the version you are working for, and date, what is the project name, and contact number, and like this is the sign off, like I already mentioned, like you have to take a sign off from the stakeholders. So these all are the stakeholder: project manager, business analyst, application architect, lead developer, test data manager, performance test manager, performance test environment manager. So they all will refer this particular test plan document, and they'll give a sign off date and signature. Once this everyone has approved this kind of thing, then only you can proceed with the next activity. Again, there is some of the record changes, like if the stakeholders are not satisfied with whatever the test plan document you have prepared, they will ask you to they'll ask you to change the particular document, and then you have to mention that as well, like what are the changes you have done and how many times you have done. So this is the table of contents, like performance test plan sign off, record of changes, table of contents, executive summary, overview, project background and scope, application architecture, overview, performance test requirement, business NFR, detailed and agreed NFR and NFR metrics, NFT metrics, performance test planning, performance test approach, like what are the test approach we are following, performance testing and monitoring tools details, like performance test script steps, performance data planning, and in execution again we'll come like what are the performance test summary, what type of test we'll be performing, so smoke, load, stress, soak, performance test monitoring metrics, performance test environment, assumption, constraint, risk and dependency, assumption, constraint, risk, dependency, milestone, what is the milestone for this particular type of project or release, and everything, like executive summary. So you have to mention in this executive summary, you have to mention the project background and scope, what are the scope you are trying to achieve in this particular release. And then we have to mention a application architecture, So we have to mention all, like what are the architecture, technology used, and impacted components. Like technology used, like maybe suppose the application has been built with Java or .NET. We have to mention the like technologies and what are the database involved and everything. Like this all technology and architecture, like how the data is from where to where it is moving. All the details. It will overall system architecture. We have to mention architectural diagram, detailed information on each component. Again, performance test requirement. In this requirement, we have to write what are the requirement for this particular. Please write here the justification to include the performance testing for this project. Attach the performance score matrix sheet or MOM, in which performance testing of specific or all the components was agreed. So again, in the previous first we have discussed, this is the business process is it's involved, and this is the amount of user load it is involved. So we have to detail and agreed NFR. So this is the NFR and NFT1. So this is the matrix we will perform, like for NFR1, NFT2, NFR2 for NFT3. So there, this is the non-functional test. Third will perform for NFR3. We have to perform in the NFT first phase itself, and NFR5 we have to perform in the fifth. So this is the matrix I was talking about earlier, when we have to map this a performance tester has to map this particular matrix with the execution or the scope what is has been decided with the type of test. Again, performance test planning. This is a performance test approach. Document the performance test approach by covering 5 key areas. You can refer high level document, low level document, SSD system design document to collect the project background information on the application and infrastructure. Under the production load model, to determine what load should also be considered for execution during the performance test. And identify the load test, like what are the type of test: peak hour load test or stress test or soak test, anything. This is the main thing which I was talking about. Understand the production load model to determine what load should also be considered for the execution during the performance. As we will not be performing in our production environment, and we will be doing this particular test in the NFT environment. This plays a very important role. Production load model, like you have to analyze this particular production data. They will provide you that production data, and in that particular you have to come across what is the peak load and how would you identify this particular thing. What key performance metric area will be important to monitor or define the past metrics. So what is the important factor which makes this particular performance mm, metrics to be passed? The performance requirement are strongly recommended to drive the criteria pass/fail criteria, but previous result comparison can also be considered in the decision making. In case of which I told you, like suppose we will be having 4 tests in this particular cycle phase, then we have this we have to, before the code has been like deployed to the production, we'll do a test and collect all the matrices, and after the production, like we'll make a baseline and a benchmarking, and after that we'll compare the benchmarking 1 with benchmarking 2 and see how responsive is our application, and there must not be any kind of degradation in the response time or anything, any server resources. So consider the change request which was raised in the past, include the scope of those CRs in the phase of testing. So here you can mention the change request and what is the time, the response time too high for login page, and you have to mention the date and all. So again, coming, what are the performance testing and monitoring tool details? Like micro focus performance center we will be using for our particular test for execution, and what are the tool we will be using, like Dynatrace or AppDynamics, anything. And so again, coming to performance test script, in this section, the performance A performance test script that needs to be developed are detailed by user action step as shown in the table below for each key business process within the application under test which was agreed from the project. A performance test script needs to be developed. And like as I have already mentioned, like suppose you have taken a one particular, so this is the way you have to build a particular NFT script. Name is like for the first, and what is the scenario is this product ordering. So what is the scenario for traversal flow? Home page, you have, then you have to go to login page, search product, select the product, payment, and log out. So this is the first script we have to design. Next, same thing, home page, login, order product, select product, cancel product, and log out. This is the product cancellation. And what is the pacing between iteration? For each script we have to mention, and what is the think time we have to mention. And performance test data planning, like how much duration we wanted to run this particular test, and how much amount of data it needs to be required. We after analyzing, like for the first iteration in what particular second it is achieving, we have to find out, calculate, and find out the TPS. So performance test summary. So cycle 1, run 1, load test, 1 hour load test with peak load. Cycle 1, run 2, repeat load test 1 hour test with peak load. Same cycle 1, run 3, test 1 hour, again repeat that particular test. Soak test will perform, then repeat the soak test. And then cycle 2, like how many number of cycle and what type of test it is there, we have to mention in everything and document it, so that it will by referring this particular, we should progress in that particular fashion. Okay, smoke test. Before starting any kind of load test or any activity, it is always recommended to uh, to perform a smoke test, so that we will make sure that all the transactions are passing and not failing, and we are not getting any kind of errors in this particular from the server. So this is the load test. This is the model. Like two cycles are there. Will perform two cycle for the load test. And what is the purpose of this particular peak hour transaction processing will be under examination. Like under the peak user load, we'll see how the transaction, and it should not breach the SLA, determining if the system can maintain response time under the highest anticipated load. Like under the highest anticipated load, the transaction are not failing and the server is still able to respond to the client well. So this test is designed to collect performance metrics on transaction throughput, response time, and system resource utilization in comparison to performance requirement. So how many tests are involved, scripts are involved in this particular thing, and duration, like ramp up, steady state, ramp down, and scenarios, load test scenario, and what are the NFR it is covering, like whether it is covering, as I have already mentioned. Let me show. So as I have mentioned, like NFR1, it comes under load test. So this is the thing I was talking, NFR1, 4, and 5. Let's see. NFR5 is what? Performance generic. So this you can see performance user load, performance generic. The acceptable limit of the failed transaction count is less than 3% of the total transaction during the day. So only 3% of error is acceptable, and beyond that, like it is not acceptable, and the test is a failure test. So this all NFRs, after the test we need to make sure like this all NFRs has must be achieved. So what is the user load volume? 500 user load. And entry criteria, the code should be stable and functionally verified. Test environment should be stable and ready to use. Test data should be available. All the NFRs should be agreed with the project. Test script should be ready to use. And XXS and exit criteria, all the NFR must met, which I already mentioned, like NFR 1, 4, and 5. This is our objective and this should match. The error rate of the transaction should not be more than 3%, which I told, should not go beyond 3%, and beyond that it is not acceptable. It is a failure test. And the CPU utilization. So coming to stress test. So this is the NFT cycle. How many types of and what is the purpose of this particular stress test? So as I have already described much things about this stress test, I think you might have known already. So how many number of tests we will perform in two cycle, four tests in two cycle. Same way we will mention 750 users and what are the scope it is. Then for 2, 4, and 5, we have to identify and what is the entry and exit criteria. Same for like I have already discussed in my previous class, soak and everything. So the soak test will determine if the system resources are recycled for reuse while processing transaction over long period. Proper recycling of memory, CPU, and other system utilization resource is healthy for performance. This test is designed to collect performance metrics on throughput, response time, and system resource utilization in comparison to performance requirement with zero memory leakage. So this is the user volume 300 as we don't consider on the peak load. We only consider on the 60% of the user load or 70%. And this is the user entry and exit criteria. So what are the metrics we will be covering? So CPU utilization, again physical memory percentage used, memory utilization, JVM runtime, total memories, JVM runtime free memories, used memories, JDBC connection. There are number of threads that are currently waiting for connection, JDBC connection per used. So these are the metrics. Thread creates how many number of threads creates during the run, how many destroyed, active threads, number of current concurrent active threads, average number of threads in the pool, uh, the average percentage of the time that all the threads are in use. So how much so what is the ratio we found that during the run how many threads are active percentage. Even we should know the amount of heap allocated. So yeah, we need to see the memory. In memory we have to see this particular user time, CPU, system time, idle time, context switching, interrupts, everything. Disk read write per second, percentage busy, how much time it is busy serving this particular request or service time, network collision, like if the packets are not dropped, datagram dropped, request dropped, byte by request byte dropped, response byte dropped, everything. And queue depth, like how many number of requests are in the queue during the test execution, and every all metrics we need to for this particular database. What are the metrics we need to cover? We have to mention, monitor this particular thing. And performance test environment, the performance test environment is x% of the. So again it comes to the client, like how much he wants to replicate from the production environment, and hence user load has been scaled down to x% post execution. The test area will be extrapolated, like on the basis of this particular uses of the production data in this NFT environment, will extrapolate the result. So again, coming to this performance test environment details, like this is the web services, and what is the version, OS, memory, and what is the core and total disk space. So this is the involved in this particular thing. Production environment details, like web services. This is having, so we have to replicate this in our NFT. This is having two web services, three middle layers, database, and XX. So production environment two. So again, you have to replicate the same. And what is the assumption, constraint, and risk and dependency? So the code version is stable and passed in the performance testing before deploying in the performance testing environment. The required license must be available in the performance center to run the test, and how many number and how much LGs we need to use. Everything it should be licensed and given to us. The fully deployed, installed, and configured web tier, middleware tier, and database server must be operational in order for perform sake out to begin. Test data must be provided to the performance testing team before the testing start. And the constraint, what are the constraints we have? We have the performance test environment has 50% of the server that production has. Like we are not considering the 100% as production data. We are just considering the 50. So based on this particular thing, we have to extrapolate the result. So the scaling factor of the performance test to production is 50%. all production load models that are executed in performance tests should be run at 50% of the full production load model represent at 100. The performance test environment does not have some of the older data that production has, which limits some of the data scenarios that can be limited. Like what are the depending on this particular data, some of the data scenarios that can be limited, like with limits, some of the data scenarios that can be simulated. Performance test team does not have a commercial tool or an approved Wireshark like tool that allows for measuring network response time using. So again, a risk if the functional errors from validating testing occur and prevent the creation of performance test script or performance test execution of the performance test, this is impacted as high. The team will start performance test execution once environment certification, test script validation, and data staging effort are completed. So these are the risk it is involved. So again, dependency. The latest build should be available in the non-functional environment before NFT start date. The team will start performance test execution once the environment has the latest and functionally. So again, coming to this is the milestone we need to achieve. Primarily, project plan submitted, the final plan subjected performance requirement and production load model reviewed and verified. Environment planning, test plan, script development, and data plan. These are the date we have to mention. Staging activity and setup, performance monitoring, configuration, and test organization. This all are the key person involved in this particular test organization and acronym, and the what are the reference document we have referred, and that is how we are about to complete the test plan document. So I think guys I have explained a lot in depth performance test planning. So you watch more times. If you don't understand this particular video, definitely you will be understanding, and you can prepare a test plan document. And it is highly needed for any organization who can prepare a test plan document in an earlier phase. So it is always good, even if you are a fresher or some kind of thing, it is always good to have knowledge and understanding. So easily you can continue with the project requirements. So as stated above, a typical performance test plan contains all the basic information which are required during the test execution. Actually, a performance test plan is an agreement between a client and performance testing team, which is referred at the time of test report to confirm whether results are as per the client's expectation or not. The conclusion in the performance test report is made based on the information written in the test plan. So, guys, thanks for joining this class. Have a great day. So, if you face any kind of doubt or challenge, please reach me out. Thanks. So, thanks for joining. So, we'll continue with our next phase, like test design and scripting phase, and it will be a very exciting thing. I'll be working on test scripting, and, and we'll consider here onwards our main work start. We'll start working on the scripts and all, and more functions we'll see and know more about views. And so thanks, have a great day.